Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Welcome to part 7 of my review of Masks of Nyarlathotep for Call of Cthulhu 7th edition by Chaosium. This video will cover the Shrine to Bast, the Clive Expedition, the Resurrection of Nitocris and the chapter climax. The next part is the only sidetrack scenario in this section, the Black Cat, though information can be gained from it that they could find useful. At this point, the investigators should be aware of Jan Willem van Huvelen and his expulsion from the Clive expedition. He was left to fend for himself in Cairo and has tried to gain employment with other expeditions over the last few months to no avail. In recent weeks, he's been trying to curry favour with the Clive expedition, and Martin Winfield has pointed them towards a seldom trod back alley in Cairo, telling them that there was something there that was worthy of study that could get him back into the expedition, claiming that the Memphis dig was taking up too much time for him to look into it himself. This is a lie, and he knows he is sending Van Huvelen into a dangerous situation, knowing that his ambition and greed will get the better of him. He has sent him after the black rites of Louvet Caraf in order to get rid of him for good. Van Huvelen made his way into the streets of Cairo and eventually came upon a dark chamber with a small fire brazier burning in it, and a sleek statue of a cat-headed woman, Bast. He examined the statue and was about to leave when his prodding and poking opened up a secret compartment in the base of the statue. Contained within were several ancient papyrus scrolls with hieroglyphics on them, the Black Rites. There was nobody there to see him take them, well, nobody human, so he took them and left. The worship of Bast in Cairo is mostly done by cats, though there is a very select priesthood. One such priest tended the shrine, a woman called Neris, who is a weir-panther, who seeks the return of the Black Rites at any cost. For the last few weeks, Van Huvelen has been deciphering the scrolls and learned that Louvet Caraf was a priest of Bast during the 13th dynasty. Additionally, everywhere Van Huvelen goes, he is followed by cats, getting the occasional scratch from these feline stalkers. After this, it details the two main dramatis personae in the Black Cat. The first is Jan Willem van Huvelen, a hapless archaeologist and alcoholic, whom it suggests could be a decent replacement investigator should one of the party die, and Neris, an apparent 22-year-old woman who is a weir-panther and priestess of Bast. She makes a formidable enemy indeed should anybody cross her in panther form. We then move on to the section on finding Van Huvelen, hunting the Dutchman. He's quite difficult to track down, though Nigel Wassif or Dr. Kaffour can find out where he is for them within a day or two, should the investigators have befriended either of those. Using only their own resources can take them around a week unless they have a decent dragoman. Approaching the Clive expedition is pointless as they don't know where he is, though they may be intrigued as to why the investigators are looking for him. Speaking to Martin Winfield about him can reveal, with the right psychology roll, that he knows more than he is saying, and those that either intimidate or charm him can find out that he knows where he is but won't say how much danger he is in. The Dutchman is currently in the Street of the Moths in the Old City in a room behind a tailor's shop. When the investigators arrive, they will find the grizzled old tailor shooing several cats away from his shop with a broom. Van Huvelen's room is dingy, containing the very basics needed to survive, as well as a few books on Egyptian archaeology. The Black Rites are buried in a hole in the floor underneath his cot. It also mentions in this box that Van Huvelen may even approach the party if he has even a sniff that they are looking for someone with his skill set. Talking to Van Huvelen will be easy enough should the food and drink flow freely. When discussing the Clive expedition, he will claim that he was present when the unidentified female mummy was discovered. He believes it was indeed Nitocris, and will go on to discuss the disappearance of the mummy. Some of his claims will directly contradict the official line, and he will initially say that he was dismissed from the expedition due to a cost-cutting exercise. If pressed, however, he will admit that it was due to his excessive drinking. Investigators will notice during their conversation with Van Huvelen that a cat will slink into the room. Van Huvelen will react by chasing it off. The Dutchman will offer praise for the individual members of the expedition and is quite fond of Johanna Sprecht despite her political opinions. He is also on good terms with Agatha Broadmoor and James Gardner, even though he thinks their theories on the occult in Egypt are far-fetched. Once full of Dutch courage, pun intended, he will tell the investigators about the Black Rites, claiming he has found something that will make him rich and famous. He will tell them of the tiny forgotten temple that he found the scrolls in and that he is translating them, claiming that it will be done in a few days. If pressed further, he will produce his translation written in Dutch. Anyone with the right skills will notice that his translation is often faulty. He will tell them that the scrolls deal mostly with the worship of Bast, the cat-headed god of ancient Egypt, though he has looked into a section on Sebek, showing that he is mistranslated as being Apep. Investigators can learn some Bast-related spells from the scrolls, though these may be mistranslated. He will not reveal the location of the scrolls, though a thorough search of his room will find them, and he is reluctant to show them where he found them. Ever since he stole the scrolls, he has become the victim of a curse. Cats of all shapes and sizes follow him, seeking to avenge this theft from Bast. Over the past few days he has noticed another follower, a beautiful young Arab woman. This is Neris, and she seeks the scroll's return at any cost. If the investigators notice the inordinate amount of cats, it can cause sanity loss, and they can probably surmise that returning the scrolls could stop this from occurring. The cats should be used as a prop for the keeper, demonstrating eerie, unblinking pursuers. Should the Dutchman or the investigators kill or wound a cat, they will gather together and start sneak attacking them wherever they go. Van Huvelen will be singled out. Also, Neris will approach him directly, urging him in a friendly, almost seductive manner to return what he has taken, saying that should he not heed this warning, he will bring down the wrath of Bast upon him. If he refuses, Neris leaves and can be followed using a chase sequence listed here. If she's attacked, she will remember who has wounded her and return later in panther form to take out her revenge. She will, if cornered, warn them to leave her in peace, lest they also face the wrath of Bast. A night after the encounter with Neris, if the situation has not been resolved, she visits them in the form of a black panther, making a special point of breaking into their rooms, which they find strewn with their belongings. Seeing her in panther form is sanity draining, though she will only fight in self-defence. She will return on subsequent nights fully healed each time, with Van Huvelen terrified and becoming increasingly violent as she tries to retrieve the scrolls. There is the chance of a peaceful resolution. If the investigators make a show of trying to persuade Van Huvelen to return the scrolls, Neris will visit them and ask for their assistance. Should Neris die, her killer will face the wrath of Bast as promised. Cats follow the killer, increasing in numbers. If they are killed, bigger, more ferocious cats like panthers or lions will take their place. The only way to stop this is to return the scrolls to the shrine or by seeking Bast's mercy and taking Neris's place. Should the killer leave Egypt, there are other ways for big cats to hunt the killer, in Nairobi for example. Next we move on to the Temple of Bast itself. Should the various methods employed by Neris scare Van Huvelen enough to return the scrolls, or he is talked into it by the investigators, he will agree to lead them to the secret temple. As previously mentioned, it is hidden in the old city, and it takes him a while to remember where it was. As they get nearer to it, they see more cats loitering. It's a large dome-like space that is filled with many nooks and crannies that house cats of all types. Opposite the entrance there is a 7-foot-tall statue of Bast, a beautiful cat-headed woman sat on a throne carved from a single block of obsidian. Closer inspection will reveal the drawer that Van Huvelen found the scrolls in. Fighting the cats in here is an incredibly bad idea, as more will pour in to help, including big cats. If they're peaceful, they will not be harmed, and will see the comings and goings of many cats. If they hang around for a few hours, a human will enter the temple, who will explain that he is seeking the aid of Bast to find his lost cat. Should Van Huvelen return the scrolls, that is essentially the matter dealt with. If he is killed, Neris does not know where the scrolls are and keeps tabs on the investigators. If they take the scrolls and try to export them, Neris will do all she can to prevent this happening, even to the point of informing the authorities that they are smuggling antiquities. Should Neris fail, Bast will take charge, sending cats to fight them. There are various awards for performing different actions in this section. The final thing here are the stats for the various characters and varieties of feline. Okay, so now we move back to the main scenario thread with the Clive expedition. It lists the various ways in which the investigators can find out about it, with the basic details being that it was financed by the Penhew Foundation, with Dr. Henry Clive having been in Cairo for the past 5 months with his party. They're currently excavating at Memphis, having recently fled Giza's plateau following the theft of the mummy. Other than the people described in the Dramatis Personae section, the expedition consists of overseers, diggers, water boys, guides, etc. Memphis is extremely well guarded, though anybody with experience in archaeological digs will realise that though this is extreme, it's far from abnormal. The events of Giza have made sure that they are not taking any chances. Should they journey to Memphis, they will be greeted by Martin Winfield, who's perfectly civil and charming. They would need to fulfil certain criteria: a police official, a British archaeologist, or having a letter of introduction from Gavigan to get near to the dig site. If they've befriended Jan Willem van Huvelen, he can arrange a meeting with possibly all of the dig's core staff. He has a huge desire to ingratiate himself to Dr. Clive, and may even betray the investigators to the Brotherhood if he feels it may help him along. Should they talk to the expedition, they can discover a few things. The mummy that was uncovered at Giza was unprepared but preserved, and of an unknown Egyptian queen. There were no identifying hieroglyphics, but the funerary trappings were enough to convince Clive of the mummy's importance. Clive will tell them that a gold coffer containing papyrus scrolls was removed, but they were useless. If they've spoken to Van Huvelen earlier, they will know that this is untrue. The scrolls were actually fine, and told the story of Nitocris's reign. They were sent to Omar al-Shakti and replaced by junk. Clive will tell them that arrangements were made with the authorities to remove the casket, but that 3 nights later screams were heard from inside the pyramid, and that the mummy and 2 Egyptian police guards were missing. None of them have been found since. Nobody knows how the thieves moved the sarcophagus, which weighed several tons, from the pyramids so quickly, as it would have taken the expedition several days. The dust from the scene was undisturbed, and there were no signs of it being moved. If asked directly, Clive will state that he doesn't believe that Queen Nitocris was in the sarcophagus, as there was no proof, with Winfield and Specht backing him up on this. Should the investigators speak to Agatha Broadmoor or James Gardner, they tell the investigators that the mummy was positively identified as Queen Nitocris by Clive when they were in London, and he is being overly discreet. Broadmoor claims that a supernatural entity moved the sarcophagus, saying that it was via an undetectable passage. Little do any of them know, but the mummy is now presently in the great chamber of Nyarlathotep, far beneath the Giza Sphinx, having been moved with powerful magic. Agatha will mention that the body may have been taken away to be resurrected if persuaded to, and that this requires 3 powerful artefacts: Crown of Nitocris, the Girdle of Nitocris, and the Necklace of Nitocris, though she doesn't know what they look like, and knows that a ritual is involved. Mentioning this to others such as Winfield or Clive will have it dismissed as nonsense. They can confirm with Dr. Kafur that magical resurrection is possible, and he will mention that a resurrection might be significant with regard to the return of the Black Pharaoh. Broadmoor is, of course, correct. The Brotherhood are in the possession of the necklace and crown, though the girdle is in the Mosque of Ibn Tulun. If the Brotherhood is mentioned, everyone denies its existence, though Winfield and Clive can be seen to be lying with the right role. Clive will agree that while he has never heard of the organisation, its existence is not beyond the realms of possibility. They will also claim that they moved location from Giza to Memphis due to their permission being revoked after the mummy was stolen. After this, we move on to the next section, an audacious theft. Faraz Najjar has heard that the Brotherhood want an item that is kept in the former Mosque of Ibn Tulun. The mosque is half a mile west of the citadel of Saladin and quite easy to find. It's the oldest, most complete mosque in Cairo and sits near the City of the Dead, which is to the south. A bit of investigating will turn up that it is also an asylum of sorts. Should they decide to approach the mosque, they can ask for a meeting with a member of staff, which will produce one of the medical faculty who will be bemused at the idea that there is anything worth stealing here. They will recommend that the investigators speak to one of the ulama, a learned scholar of Islam, who attend to the spiritual welfare of the inmates. With a bit of luck, they will be introduced to Ahmed al-Dahabi. He's a busy man who is uninterested in talking to tourists, and is reluctant to meet them. If they mention the Brotherhood or a proposed theft of something from the building, they'll be guided to another building adjacent to the mosque. This is his office of sorts, and he will attempt to learn what they know about the Black Pharaoh or the relic contained here, not revealing much until he believes that they are not a threat. Should he feel he can trust them, he tells them that there is indeed a powerful artefact within the mosque that is guarded. He will deflect all questions surrounding the artefact until he can be assured that they can help defend it or provide sufficient information. He will explain that someone has already tried to steal the artefact, but they were easily repelled, and he reveals that they wore inverted ankhs, the symbol of the Brotherhood. The investigators will have a difficult job explaining that the Brotherhood are unlikely to give up, and if he sufficiently trusts their word, he will call upon Nessim Efti to join the meeting. Both men are aware of the Black Pharaoh, though they insist that he was destroyed long ago by Allah. The true name of the Black Pharaoh, Nyarlathotep, is known to them, though they won't say it out loud, and they are both aware that the girdle can be used to resurrect Nitocris. They've even tried destroying it, something they are unable to do. They are also aware of Omar al-Shakti, but don't believe that the Brotherhood still exists, instead believing that the Carlisle expedition stirred an ancient evil. The Girdle of Nitocris itself is contained within a guarded cellar under al-Dahabi's office with only one entrance. It's 25 feet down and is very dry and cool. Locked iron doors guard both ends of the corridor. A small chest sits in the room and it is guarded by 6 ulama armed with scimitars at all times. Here they wait for death and a final chance to testify to their faith. Nessim Efti is 90 years old and wields the sword of Akmala, an actual enchanted weapon that could aid the investigators. They're sworn to guard the girdle or die trying. Each of the guards spends most of their day here, only having a few hours during the daytime where they walk above ground, ministering to patients and experiencing a modicum of normality. Food is delivered twice a day, and the whole routine that they adhere to is taken incredibly seriously. The players are presented with a number of choices: help defend the girdle, try to steal it, or attempt to destroy it. If they can render it useless, Nitocris cannot be raised from the dead, and if they steal it, they prevent an assault on the mosque. They will only be allowed to guard the girdle if they convince al-Dahabi of their sincerity. If they can't convince him, they can still watch its hiding place from a distance, and may be present when it's attacked by the Brotherhood. If they're allowed to join the guards, they'll be there when a hunting horror is conjured and attacks. If they steal a girdle, the Brotherhood dispatches members to recover it, which is bad enough without adding the Cairo police, who are also alerted to the theft. Dr. Kafur can help them with the necessary permits to remove it from Cairo, labelling it as antique jewellery, though Omar al-Shakti will oppose it at every step. Removing it from Cairo is definitely a wise move, though actually retaining it makes life more difficult. It can be stored in Dr. Kafur's vault in the Egyptian Museum, though the Brotherhood will do everything they can to gain entrance. If they somehow manage to destroy it, methods are discussed later on, the Brotherhood will send cultists to avenge its loss. If they're honourable and brave when conducting themselves with al-Dahabi, they will acquire an ally that will provide undying gratitude and assistance, and he may even give them the sword of Akmala on the condition that they dedicate their lives to the struggle against evil. Many doors in the Muslim world will be open to them should they do this. If the Brotherhood succeeds in stealing the girdle, the investigators will be sent a news article detailing the assault from the Cairo Bulletin by either Nigel Wasif or Dr. Kafur. The underlying message is that the Brotherhood have stolen the girdle and masked it as an accident, meaning the resurrection of Nitocris looms ever closer. They will not encounter it again until the proposed night of her raising from the dead. Finding al-Dahabi at the hospital is easy enough, though he's in a state of shock at witnessing a hunting horror appearing and slaughtering his friends. The investigators can contact the police with regard to the investigation being conducted, and with the right roles they can make contact with Dr. Emile Vabreau, the forensics expert for the Cairo police. She found an odd substance at the scene that she is sent off to Paris and Geneva for further testing. If they ingratiate themselves with her, they can examine the tissue, which resembles a leathery black hide that has muscle underneath that twitches even though it's been extracted from the whole. It's actually hunting horror flesh that was cut off with the sword of Akmala. The next section is called A Dangerous Man and details the investigators' dealings with Omar al-Shakti. It gives a broad array of how the players could have heard of him, as he is mentioned several times in other chapters. They may wish to pay him a visit to find out what he is all about, or to even just get the measure of him. He owns a large cotton plantation a few miles north of Cairo, and his home is in the town of Ghazira Mohammed, which is 6 miles north of Cairo on the banks of the Nile. It's quite easy to reach using a dragoman or a hotel concierge, and visiting there will show that the plantation is just that. The workers are slightly quieter than expected, as they are a mix of cultists and labourers, though very perceptive investigators could spot an inverted anchor around the neck of a worker. Should they stake the place out, they could easily follow one of the desert pilgrimages of the cultists here at the night of the waning moon. Their crowd grows steadily as they move towards the Sphinx at Giza. If they wish to join them, they will need to acquire white robes inscribed with inverted ankhs, something they may already have. If the investigators take the more brazen route of arranging to meet al-Shakti, he will greet them upon arrival, welcoming them in and offering them refreshments of mint tea and honey cakes. The decor is luxurious and Egyptian in nature, aside from a brass-mounted clock hanging on one of the walls, its design seeming out of place. This is al-Shakti's marine chronometer that has been removed from its wooden case and is exactly the same as the one in Sir Aubrey's workshop in China and the one in Ndari's sanctum at Juju House in New York. There are other clues hidden about the place for sharp-eyed investigators, including a photograph of al-Shakti and Zara Shafiq. Should the investigators talk to al-Shakti, he will deny all knowledge of Queen Nitocris and the Black Pharaoh, and claims to put all of his faith in Allah. If they'd done due diligence and uncovered his link, he will become annoyed and claim that he is simply a hard-working businessman and that the stories are spread by rivals to discredit him. He will agree that he knew Sir Aubrey and the Penhew Foundation, as well as the members of the Carlisle expedition who he met briefly. With regards to Jackson Elias, he will claim he's never heard of him, though his lying can be easily determined. After this, he will bid them farewell and contact Shafiq in London to see if she has heard of them, if indeed she is still alive, and dispatch a cultist to watch them. If they follow other lines of inquiry through, for example, the likes of Nigel Wasif or Faraz Najjar, they'll find a mix of views. He is respected for his business acumen, though no businessman that have crossed him will speak of him at all. His financial records are all above board, and he is generally considered a pillar of the Cairo community. If they break into his home, they can find his safe. If they are caught, he will maintain the facade as an honest businessman and involve the police and are now on the Brotherhood's watch list. The safe, should they gain access to it, contains business records, some cash and shipping records for the last 5 years, dealing with Hofang in Shanghai and Randolph Shipping in Darwin, Australia. There are a few further clues. Edward Gavigan's business card, which is identical to the one found in Jackson Elias's hotel room, an initialised receipt that has AP on it, and also, should the keeper allow, the crown and necklace of Nitocris. The next section is where we head towards the conclusion of the Egypt chapter and is called The Horrors Below. At this point, the investigators should have enough evidence to show that the Brotherhood plans something awful in the wastes beyond Cairo, and all trails should lead to Giza. The 3 pyramids, those of Cheops, Sephiron and Mycerinus, are a popular destination for tourists and can easily be reached from the city. Guided tour tickets are available, and the plateau has a number of archaeological digs occurring at the same time here, sponsored by various prestigious universities from around the world. The theft of the mummy, however, has caused great tension, as many feel it has jeopardised their work. We have some information on the Great Sphinx at Giza, and the fact that it was only fully excavated from the sands in 1936 means that it is still partially buried, though this doesn't affect the cult's ability to enter the tunnels beneath. It suggests that some of the security are members of the Brotherhood to ease things along. There are various leads the investigators can follow, including the district police, who could eventually let slip that they found a hidden shaft near to Mycerinus' pyramid, but it was identified as a burial shaft. They're happy to tell the investigators where the shaft is. If Nitocris is mentioned, a sharp-eyed investigator will spot one of the officers making a warding sign against evil. Should they talk to the police about Omar al-Shakti, they'll be incredulous that such an upstanding member of the community be even considered to be in league with any wrongdoers unless they have actual hard evidence. They will be warned not to spread lies about such a respectable citizen. It then gives us some information on the smallest of the pyramids, Mycerinus'. It has a large scar on its north face caused by the son of Saladin, who tried to destroy it in the 12th century. Some say he was intent on finding and destroying Nitocris for good. It is not easy to get into, and it's steep and claustrophobic on the inside. There are no guards currently on the pyramid. Should the investigators search the pyramid, they will find a series of small antechambers in which one has a sliding panel into the tunnels. If they were the guide, they will immediately flee and inform the authorities unless stopped, and if the police are told, the time that can be spent here is limited. This is their way to the Great Chamber of Nyarlathotep. We then move on to Descent into Horror, which follows the idea that the investigators head into the tunnels. There are 4 other entrances which are marked on this map here, and at this point they could be aware of 3 of them. It details all of the entrances. Entrance A is with the stele that was erected by Thutmosis IV and is in front of the Sphinx. It is magical, and its 4 sides tell the story of the discovery of the Sphinx, though there are 13 glyphs that form the statement, "Mighty is the god whose breath brings death and whose form brings madness." If this passage is recited out loud at night and 12 magic points are sacrificed, the stele becomes intangible and can be passed through. This takes them over 200 feet below the surface. It stays open for 2 minutes. Entrance B is a hole in the ground around 300 yards south of the stele and has a shaft that falls 50 foot downwards. It's very difficult to climb and needs equipment. Entrance C is another hole 300 yards north of the stele that is as difficult as the other small shaft to climb. Entrance D is the one the investigators could discover in the pyramid. When the investigators enter the tunnels below the Sphinx, they realise that the silence is oppressive and it is pitch black. There is a main tunnel of hewn stone that runs from entrance A all the way to the main entrance below the stele. Around the midway point is the Great Chamber of Nyarlathotep. The main tunnel is painted with foul images of men with the heads of animals, animals with human limbs, and unrecognisable entities doing all manner of obscene things. There is a table of random events that are designed to unnerve and unhinge the investigators. There are lots of side tunnels. Some are hewn from stone, while others have the more organic feel of looking like they've been dug out by claws by some great beast. Again, the branches are to confuse the investigators and give them the sensation of being hopelessly lost. It details how they can find the path, with the obvious option of following the Brotherhood being viable, as well as using navigation and even luck. It moves on to list some of the additional hazards for pulp players and gives a small table of random pits and chasms, and then we move on to the Great Chamber of Nyarlathotep. This great hall is the centre of rituals performed by the Brotherhood and is where Nitocris will be resurrected. The hall is around 400 by 500 foot long and wide and 100 foot high. It is supported by numerous ebon pillars whose tops look like the branches of black trees that sway in the wind, draining the sanity for those viewing them. There is a set of stairs that leads us somewhere of the keeper's devising, and a large square pit in the middle of the hall that looks like black water. Further investigation will uncover tiny ripples playing across the top of it. A set of black marble steps lead down to it, and anyone unfortunate enough to end up in it will be attacked by 3-foot-long leeches with rasping mouths. These are counted amongst the 1,000,000 favoured ones. They will rapidly drain the blood of their victims. It also mentions that with life being as cheap as it was at this time in Cairo, this pool is used to dispose of those who speak ill of al-Shakti or sacrifices of their foul rites. The leeches are fed weekly with a fresh corpse, as well as when ceremonies are performed. The next thing described is the altar. It is made from white marble and quite large. The sarcophagus of Nitocris will lay upon it. The investigators find this hall after the events of Ibn Tulun. The 3 Nitocris artefacts will also be here. Beyond the altar are hideous double thrones of a vile green, sweating stone, carved with numerous images of torture and cruelty, similar to the ones painted in the corridors. Hieroglyphics above the throne proclaim it as that of Nitocris, though it has 2 human-sized seats. There is also a large processional bridge in the hall that is carved with disgusting figures and writhing tentacles. Near the bridge is another stele that is the same size as the one on the front of the Sphinx. This has an invocation and allows the priests of the Brotherhood to transport themselves from the entrance chamber to here, dramatically cutting down the travel time. There is a hidden locked door behind the stele that leads to a branch tunnel, and this could be used to hide in while witnessing the horrors performed here. The final thing of note here is an enormous hole in the rear wall of the Great Hall. It's around 100 foot wide and 125 foot deep and pitch black. Anyone brave or stupid enough to enter it will believe after a few minutes of investigation that it appears to be just a big hole. Sadly, this is not the case. It is an interdimensional gate between Earth and a plane of interest to Nyarlathotep. If the proper ritual is performed and 20 magic points spent, the hole will open a gate to the crawling chaos. If anyone in the hole passes a Cthulhu Mythos roll, they automatically expend 20 magic points and are transported to the inner sanctum of the bent pyramid where the Black Pharaoh will appear before them. More on this in a bit. A less obvious thing is that the hole allows the Black Sphinx access to the Great Chamber, though this only happens when the spell Call the Black Sphinx is invoked. We have details on the Black Sphinx here. It is a monstrous spawn of Nyarlathotep. It looks like the ideal of a sphinx, except its face is wrinkled, eyeless, and has a myriad of maws covering it. It is a terrifying thing to behold. The next thing we have is details of the cult's rituals. At the dark of the moon each month, a minimum of 50 cultists will gather in the Great Chamber, with the focus of the rites being death by sacrifice or initiating new members. The new members must perform the sacrifices to demonstrate their loyalty to the Black Pharaoh. Just observing these foul rites causes sand loss. New priests are only initiated at the solstice ceremonies. These are grand affairs and the Black Sphinx speaks at these. These are the only ones that take place in the deserts surrounding Dashur, and the Sand Dweller worshippers can also attend these. Anyone found infiltrating these rituals are immediately executed. Once the Brotherhood have the 3 artefacts required to resurrect Nitocris, they perform the next grand ritual in the Great Chamber. It mentions that this would be a satisfying conclusion for the investigators. 12 priests are present, including Omar al-Shakti and Martin Winfield, as well as 100 lesser priests, including Dr. Clive and 20 children of the Sphinx. The rest of the Clive expedition are either attendees or sacrificers. Nitocris' body has been placed on the altar. The order of the ceremony is detailed here step by step. They are quite intricate and involve Agatha Broadmoor being forced to use her powers to speak to the spirit of Nitocris while victims are tossed into the leech pit. Gardner and Broadmoor are sacrificed and Nitocris is restored to life. She drinks a goblet of blood while al-Shakti, Clive Winfield and the other priests summon the Black Sphinx, which then feeds on the cultists. Nitocris will dismiss it when it is sated and will then cast Contact Nyarlathotep to summon the Black Pharaoh, who coalesces from the blood, bone and gristle that the Sphinx has left behind. He then ascends to the double throne and takes a seat next to Nitocris while a chorus of leeches sing his praises. As you may imagine, witnessing this is sanity shattering. It details a number of ways to foil the Brotherhood. This includes destroying the mummy, the Deus Ex option of Nodens appearing and aiding the group, and the extreme measure of killing the innocent Agatha Broadmoor. It then moves on to the items of power. Should any of the crown, girdle or necklace of Nitocris be missing or destroyed, then the ritual can't happen. They're all impervious to normal damage, and details of the individual items can be found in Appendix D of the second book. The methods of destroying them can be found in various mythos tomes, and Dr. Kafur can assist with this. It gives specific details on how to destroy each item, and the methods and spells needed are scattered throughout the chapters. Should Nitocris be resurrected, she takes the name Sharifa Rawash, a wealthy lady of mysterious origins. As Sharifa, she furthers the agenda of Nyarlathotep. The investigators will have no idea initially who this new person is, nor her true nature. After this we have the final chapter, Into the Sanctum. This covers what should happen if the investigators make their way to the throne room of the Bent Pyramid. Keepers are advised to encourage the players to pursue this route as it is a climax to many sessions of hard work. It gives us some information on the Maiden Pyramid and how the Carlisle expedition held the ceremony there. All entrances to the pyramid are blocked by stone and rubble that would take months to clear. Around 20 miles south of Cairo is Dashur. There are 2 pyramids here, the Red Pyramid and the Bent Pyramid. The Red Pyramid was the one that Roger Carlyle broke the ward on, and where they could have received one of the pieces of the Eye of Light and Darkness earlier from Nuri. The Bent Pyramid is named such because it has a strange curved appearance due to how it was built. It still has some of the limestone cladding on it, hinting at the awe-inspiring site it must have been in past ages. It has 2 entrances, one on the north side that is always guarded by 4 Egyptian soldiers, and the west entrance, which is a door that they could easily break into. A thorough search and the right rolls will reveal a secret door with steps and ramps leading up to the interior of the capstone of the pyramid. This contains a secret chamber, the throne room of Nyarlathotep on Earth. The room is marked by an asymmetrical arch at the entrance with a throne room beyond on top of a dais with bas-reliefs decorating the wall. If any of the investigators have read Life as a God from the New York chapter, they recognise this from one of the descriptions. It has 6 pillars that are topped with an alien gem that burns like torch if flame is put near them. Lighting all of these summons the Black Pharaoh. The throne itself is carved from black obsidian and is indestructible. If a mortal is sitting on it when Nyarlathotep is summoned, then the god possesses them and speaks and acts through them. When Nyarlathotep leaves, the person they possess takes a potential massive sand hit as a result of the possession. If nobody is in the throne, then Nyarlathotep appears as the Black Pharaoh. The bas-reliefs are partly Egyptian, partly Cthulhu mythos. If read, they foretell the impending birth of the child of Nyarlathotep within the Mountain of the Black Wind, though the when is vague. To the left of the throne there is a bas-relief of a star chart where Fomalhaut, Aldebaran and Deneb are the only ones that are recognisable. Those versed in Cthulhu mythos, science, astronomy and occult can recognise a planetary configuration that occurs on January the 14th, 1926. This should set alarm bells ringing. If they check an almanac, they will discover that there is a total solar eclipse on that day. On the right of the throne, there is a distorted map carved into the wall of Eurasia, Africa, Australia and the Western Pacific. Examination will indicate that it is a relatively new addition to the chamber. An inlaid ebony band that crosses the Indian Ocean indicates the solar eclipse, and written around the outside in mythos symbols, it says, "The old ones shall come hence, all shall tremble before their awful might." Should Nyarlathotep arrive, the entrance to the throne room turns into solid rock, pushing people standing there outside the room. A group of sand dwellers will appear and attack, though they won't venture beyond the entrance to the pyramid. Those within the throne room will witness Nyarlathotep appear in full black pharaoh form, tall and glowing with magnificent malice. If they've seen the bust in Edward Gavigan's workroom, they will recognise it instantly. The air boils as two invisible hunting horrors are summoned. Foul music plays in the minds of the investigators and the smell of death emanates from everywhere. Nyarlathotep will address each of them individually and ask them what their heart's desire is, letting everyone answer and then considering their replies. Then he makes them an offer. Give up their foolish quest and serve him, and they will be rewarded in the manner they have described. Nyarlathotep will not force them to comply, though that would be easy enough. They must give themselves willingly. Should anybody accept, the map disappears with a wave of Nyarlathotep's hand, and a shimmering gateway appears that will take them to where they need to be to attain what they want. If they step through, they are removed from the campaign as a player, but may reappear later on as an adversary. The gateway closes when the last of the new recruits passes through. It is the Keeper's call as to whether Nyarlathotep will recognise if an investigator is lying in order to double-cross them. If they do recognise the lie, the gateway may lead to their doom. Those that refuse Nyarlathotep's offer see the Black Pharaoh's expression change to one of irritation and his tone turns cruel. He tells them that to continue is foolish and that their efforts are meaningless against a god, advising them to return to their homes with their tail between their legs and live out their small lives. He will show them an image of the Carlisle expedition being slaughtered by hunting horrors, ghouls and formless spawn, seeing them ripped to shreds. Those that have already met Jack Brady, Robert Houston or Hypatia Masters will no doubt be confused by these images as they contradict what they have actually seen. After all is said, Nyarlathotep will slowly disappear in front of the investigators and the stone slab will dissolve, allowing them to leave. Once they have left, the pillar doorway also vanishes. This was their one and only chance of entering the inner sanctum of Nyarlathotep. It gives some information on making Nyarlathotep much tougher if Nitocris's resurrection is foiled, and a section on pulp considerations. Should the investigators make the monumentally foolish decision to attack Nyarlathotep, he will unleash the invisible hunting horrors upon them and then kill one or two of them in writhing agony before pausing to see if the lesson has been learned. If they continue fighting, he shows no mercy. Should they give up at this point, Nyarlathotep will mock them and then offer them again one last time, hoping that they now realise there is no point in standing against him. Should they refuse a second time, he will vanish and they will be free to leave. If somehow they manage to inflict significant damage on the Black Pharaoh form, he will change into the form of the Bloody Tongue and then vanish alongside the hunting horrors. The throne room wall will remain solid and they will be trapped within. We have a box here which says what the Carlisle expedition did when they arrived here. Nyarlathotep transported them back to ancient Egypt where they learned many potent spells. Additionally, Nyarlathotep seduced and impregnated Hypatia Masters while there. Finally, it moves to the conclusion. After meeting Nyarlathotep, they will start seeing glimpses of the god dogging them while in Egypt, whether that be a face in a crowd or a reflection in a window. Should they now have the Brotherhood's attentions, there will be repeated assassination attempts against them, making it clear it is time to leave. They suggested making a thrilling pursuit and escape with cultists swarming across Cairo to stop them leaving up the Nile. Those priests of the Brotherhood left alive will warn their global counterparts of their interference. If Nitocris is resurrected, she ends up being a wild card for the Keeper and will come into play at various points in the campaign. Her main aim is to link the various cults of Nyarlathotep and the other outer gods and guide them towards bringing the world under subjugation. Her agents will begin to infiltrate powerful cults across the globe and exploit their positions using bribery, persuasion, blackmail or force, whichever is most appropriate. Another goal of hers is to fan the flames of chaos by causing racial, religious and economic tensions, with the ultimate aim being a constant state of global tension and fear. The ultimate goal is to control the power elite of the world and in turn control humanity as the empress of the world and reign in dark majesty with Nyarlathotep. While Carlisle's scheme seems at odds with Nitocris's, they are both supported by Nyarlathotep, as this is absolutely in keeping with the crawling chaos, as it sees the enslavement and chaos sown amongst humanity as merely an amusement. With this being the case, Nitocris could end up being a dangerous ally. She remains a malleable tool for the Keeper. We're given a number of rewards for the completion of this chapter, and also addresses the chance that the players could actually defeat Nyarlathotep in his guise as the Black Pharaoh. After this, it lists all of the various guides and adversaries that the chapter contains to finish things off. Okay, that concludes Book 1. The next video in this series will be Book 2, starting with Kenya.